When I check my microphone in WebEx, it works. When I use like settings and then microphone test. I hope you hear me. Oh, thanks. Hello, good morning. Can I start with presentation?
Yes, a very good morning to all. Yes, I'm Dr. Dinesh on behalf of this BigMM IEEE conference. I would like to welcome all the authors. So please wait just 1 minute, then I can give a indication that when you have to start.
Okay, I can start, yeah, right?
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my name is Andrei Zabrowski, and today I want to present our work, which I did together with my colleagues from the University of Klagenfurt. Let's start with motivation. Our work is about transcoding time prediction of video sequences for adaptive streaming. Why it's important and why we decided to work on this topic. Now we are in a situation where we can choose from several video codecs, such as AVC, HEVC, and so on. Usually in many systems, transcoding of video segments is a parallel process running in the cloud. Typically, transcoding services and platforms, they don't use any prediction of video transcoding time. Predicting the transcoding time of many combinations of transcoding parameters for different codecs and content types is a complex task and big challenge for streaming services. We believe that system with transcoding time prediction feature can significantly improve the overall transcoding time of video segments. To decrease and improve the transcoding time prediction of video sequences, we propose a novel and accurate method which is called complex CCTP, a complexity class-based transcoding time prediction. The main goal of our work is fast and accurate transcoding time prediction for video sequences. Our method consists of two main phases: data generation and transcoding time prediction using artificial neural network model. Using this slide, I will explain which video sequences and data sets used in our work. First, we selected 10 original video sequences available from a public dataset, which includes different types of video content and we represented spatial and temporal information for these video sequences in this picture. Some sequences have minor movements. For example, beauty video sequence has moving head on a static background, while other video sequences have significant movements. For example, changing street view or riding jockeys. The main characteristics of the original sequences are presented in this table. We decoded selected original video sequences into raw U format and split each sequence into segments with a duration of 2 seconds and 4 seconds. In total, we created 240 segments. The focus of our work is related to HTTP adaptive streaming, and thus we adopted the bitrate ladder as shown in this table, which consists of a wide range of bitrates and resolutions. In total, we have 19 bitrates and 11 resolutions. We performed transcoding for two video codecs, X264 and X265, on FFmpeg software and Python scripts in order to measure the segment transcoding time. We also used 9 encoding presets. For these combinations of transcoding parameters, we performed transcoding. In total, we executed 82,000 transcoding tasks, which are presented in our raw dataset. Before training ANN model, we first preprocessed the generated data and reduced the number of records. Our training and testing dataset contains maximum and minimum transcoding time for all possible combinations of a codec type, complexity class, encoding bitrate, segment duration, and FPS. On this slide, I will explain our segment complexity classification and ANN model. Calculating spatial and temporal information metrics for the original high-resolution video segments is very time-consuming. For example, the average time to calculate SI and TI metrics for a 2-second segment is about 14 seconds. That's why before calculating these two metrics, we quickly encoded video segments using ultra-fast encoding preset with a low bitrate. Bitrate was 100 kilobit per second and low resolution. It took about 1 second for 2 second segments on average. When we could calculate SI and TI metrics with average of 210 milliseconds for the same encoded video segments. By doing this, we saved almost 13 seconds on average for each segment. For all video segments, we calculated SI and TI metrics as shown in this figure. Actually, different video segments that belong to the same video can have different SI and TI values. This happens because the segments of one video may contain different visual complexity. We correlated correlation coefficient between encoded video segments with low resolution and the original video segments with high resolution. For TI and the SI metric, it is 0.98 and 0.65 respectively. That shows positively strong and highly correlated relationship. After calculating SI and TI for segments, we defined 4 types of complexity classes. We assigned video complexity class to all these video segments based on its spatial and temporal information. We defined 4 complexity classes, as can be seen here. For example, HH class means high TI and high SI metric. To divide segments into 4 classes, we used 50% boundaries. We performed ANN model training for both codecs, X264 and X265, using our training and testing datasets. All input parameters of the model are explained in this table. One of the model input parameter is a complexity class. The ANN model outputs are predicted maximum and minimum transcoding time. Let's have a look on actual transcoding time results. This figure shows average actual transcoding time for all segments belonging to a particular complexity class. As can be seen, X265 video codec for all complexity classes requires more computing resources than X264 codec. But typically, X265 video codec achieves higher quality than X264 parameters. We can see an evident relationship between average transcoding time and complexity class. Average transcoding time is different for all complexity classes, and it's shorter for video segments with low TI and low SI metric. If you compare the results for AH and HL complexity classes, we can observe that the complexity class with a high TI metric takes more transcoding time than the complexity class with high SI. This is because the temporal complexity of a segment, which is based on calculating the difference in motion between the video frames of a segment, requires more time to transcode. And important is that each complexity class significantly describes the complexity of the segments in terms of the time required for video transcoding. To evaluate the output results of proposed ANN model, we used mean absolute error and mean squared error metric. In this table, we can compare the results for our ANN model with complexity class input parameter with other ANN model which we developed for testing. Based on these results, the ANN with complexity class input parameter on the testing data predicts transcoding time better compared to the model which doesn't have any TI assigned or complexity classes. Input parameters or ANN model with TI and SI values of segments transcoded with a low resolution and bitrate. The ANN model with SI and TI input values of original video segments has slightly better mean absolute error for both codecs compared to our model. However, we cannot use this ANN model successfully because the calculation of TI and SI metric for the original video segments with high bitrate and resolution takes more time. Also, for X264, mean absolute error and mean squared error values are less than for X265. We attribute this to the fact that the average transcoding time of X264 is about half of the average transcoding time for X265 coding. And this is also reflected in the mean absolute error metric. Our approach achieved a mean absolute error of 1.37 for X264 and 2.67 for X265 codec. And for X264 codec, this is an improvement of 22% to the state-of-the-art results. We compared and analyzed the performance of our method with state-of-the-art results presented by Tevodros. For this, we investigated and compared the data set, which was created based on experiments on Intel i7 CPU using FFmpeg software. The total number of transcodings for all video codecs presented in the data set is almost 69,000 or about 17,000 per codec, while the number of transcoding for each video codec in our data set is 41,000, which is more than double per codec compared to the data set. The detailed comparison of both data sets in terms of transcoding time is shown in the table. The maximum value and standard deviation of transcoding times are much higher in our data set. We did not conduct transcoding for MP4 Part 2 codec, VP8, and H.263 codec, as they are not used for HTTP adaptive streaming. We also compared all the transcoding parameter characteristics and both data set and presented them in another table. Our data set outperforms the data set for almost all characteristics except the number of FPS. However, our data set contains an additional value of 60 FPS, which is becoming increasingly popular, especially for high resolution and bit rates. Next, we developed and deployed the Python scripts on Linux machine to calculate the input parameters for ANN models for both methods. The most time-consuming operation in Tevodros method is to calculate the number and size of IPB frames using FFprop program. This requires checking all the video frames of the original video file. In our method, the time-taking operation is complexity plus calculation, which requires to transcode the original video segment using ultra-fast preset, low bitrate and resolution, and only then we can calculate a SI/NTI complexity metric. An example of comparison for both methods for beauty video sequence if 2-second segments of average time required to calculate ANN input parameters is given in this table. Our method took 1.34 seconds to calculate both metrics, and Tevodros approach takes more than 4 seconds. With our method, the percentage decrease of time for 2-second segments of beauty video sequence is about 70%. The PDT value for all video sequences with 4-second segments are presented in the figure on the left side. As we can see, for 9 out of 10 video sequences, the PDT value ranges from 53 to 80%. And only for Big Bug Bunny video sequence, the PDT value is 36, slightly lower than for other video sequences. We also compared the results of predicted transcoding time of 2 methods. The Tevodros applied ANN, linear regression, and support vector regression to predict transcoding time. And during training and testing, we achieved mean absolute error as 1.76. With our method, we were able to minimize mean absolute error to 1.37 for X264 codec. The coefficients of determination also show that our method performs better in terms of prediction accuracy. A comparison of our results for X264 with related work unfortunately was not possible due to lack of existing methods for this codec. In conclusion, I would like to summarize our work. We proposed video complexity classification using spatial and temporal information Also, we introduced a fast approach to measure spatial and temporal information of video segments by computing them for transcoding segments with a low bitrate and resolution. Our developed ANN model is able to predict video transcoding time with low mean absolute error. Future work includes experiments on new emergent video codecs, for example, AV1 and VVC, and using predicted transcoding time for the actual scheduling of video transcoding time task. Also, we plan intelligently selecting and analyzing the content complexity of few segments of video to make prediction about the transcoding time of entire video. Thank you very much for your attention, and I am ready to answer your questions.
Thank you, Anatoly. It's a very nice presentation. Thank you for your good demonstration about the complexity CCTV. So, yes, audience, do you have any question? The audience, please, if you have any questions, so please ask. So, let Anatoly, I think audience do not have any questions. So, I'm asking you one question. What is the need of a segment with a low resolution?
Again, please, can you repeat?
What is the need to over here on segmentation with low resolution? Why you required segmentation with low resolution?
Yeah, because like for segments with high bitrate and resolution, it takes quite a lot of time to calculate spatial and temporal metrics.
Okay.
And when we transcode it to low resolution and bitrate, we can do it much faster.
Okay. Okay. Another question is, you are talking about the complexity class in terms of transencoding. Complexity class in terms of transencoding. So I want to know that how it can be interpreted in terms of content of the video. How complexity can be related with the content of the video.
For example, if we have a lot of movements in our video, spatial and temporal information will be higher. I mean, especially temporal information of video segment will be higher if we have a lot of movements in this video, or like in this segment.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Anatoly.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Is there any question? This audience? Okay, thank you very much. I think next we can move for the second paper.
Good.
Okay, thank you. So next paper, please.
Sir, I'm not able to share my screen, so probably someone could help me with that.
Yeah, please, someone help me.
Yeah, the share button is disabled.
Yeah, I think he is activating.
Yeah. Okay, it's done.
Asima, could you send? Yeah, okay, I think it's okay.
Yeah, it's done. It's done.
Okay, thank you.
So, a very good morning to all. I am Ashima Yadav from Delhi Technological University, and I'll be presenting my paper titled A Weighted Text Representation Framework for Sentiment Analysis on Medical Drug Reviews. This is my presentation outline, where I'll be discussing with the motivation behind my work, the introduction to sentiment analysis, its applications, how the sentiments in healthcare differs as compared to the normal sentiments which we see on the social media sites, the significant contribution of my work, the proposed methodology, experimental settings and results, the observations, and finally the conclusion and future scope. So as we are well aware of the fact that social media has a huge impact on our lives nowadays, so these statistics basically discusses the power of social media, which says that the daily active social media users has gone to 3.5 billion, which is almost equal to about 45% of the population. The time spent by us on social media has on an average gone to 3 hours per day. So on in 3 hours, on an average on a per day we spend on an average of 3 hours on social networking sites. Roughly around 73% of the marketers believe that their product, their marketing strategies is somewhat effective for their business. So even if you consider the social media marketing domain, the social media has contributed significantly in the marketing area too. Around 54% of the customers says that they use the social media to research for products that they wish to buy for. The 71% of the customers say that if they have a positive experience with a brand, they would likely to recommend the brand to their friends and family. And 49% of the consumers says that they depend on the recommendations on the social media. So all these things eventually shows that how the social media is growing tremendously and influencing our lifestyle and influencing the life of each one of us. So if we want to buy a new product, we simply use social media to refer the various reviews, the ratings of the product, and these reviews and these ratings do affect our buying decision. So one of the major thing behind this is the behind motivation is that what could be the motivation. So I'm not able to switch this slide to just a second. The next slide is also not visible. 1 minute. Okay, it's done. So probably what is the why the customers opinion posted online, why do people do read or refer to the customers opinions and views which are posted online? So one reason could is the most prominent reason is the trust which people have developed from the recommendations to the people that know and from the opinions of the customers that are posted online. So you could see the 70% of the people, they do trust this form of advertising which says that the customer opinions posted online, they do trust them, they do trust the recommendations from the people they know, as compared to the rest of the modes of advertising which says the ads on social networks or the ads which are displayed on your mobile phone, the text phones. So the opinions, the recommendations which you all get on the internet do play a significant part in our lives in basically motivating us. So this growing importance of sentiment analysis coincides with the social media such as the reviews, forums and discussions. So the area of sentiment analysis is basically is the area which basically deals with the inspecting the opinions, emotions, sentiments and views which is directed towards an entity. So this area, the sentiment analysis, basically analyzes the unstructured data so that we could extract the relevant information from that and transform it for the useful business intelligence. And obviously this area is popularly known as opinion mining. You might have heard this word known as opinion mining. So the simplest task could range from the fact that you just need to calculate the attitude of the text, whether the text is a positive text or a negative text or a negative text. The more complex task, a little bit more complex task could be ranking the opinion of the text from 1 to 5, which is a more fine-grained classification part. The advanced task would be you need to detect the source or the target or the complex attitude which is there, which is there in the text. So the area of sentiment analysis has an ample number of applications. We'll be looking forward to some of the most prominent and popular applications. So, for example, as I've already discussed, it is used in business intelligence. So, you could see the reviews or the ratings of a product do impact the customers. Obviously, we can get the feature wise ratings also, and even it benefits the organizations to that what all new features could be added in their product, or what all features could they have added in the product, and what all features the upcoming product could have which could make the popularity of the product, which will increase the popularity of the product, and obviously how to change their business strategies, their processes. All those things do impact their business. Now, the US presidential elections, if you see, which are going to occur. So in 2016 also the elections were there, elections were conducted. So in 2016, the tweets which were generated on the social media were collected and were analyzed over the time to calculate the sentiments of the people and analyze that who could possibly win the presidential elections in 2016. So this is also one of the interesting application of this area. One more thing is the movie review or the genre classification. Now, apart from only using the textual part, as we know, a movie could belong to various different genres. Apart from only focusing on the textual part, the review part which a movie get, we can also consider the video, the visual part. So, suppose we could simply classify the trailer of a movie or the movie into various different genres. So you don't have to watch the complete trailer in that case to detect the genre. You just have to simply calculate the sentiments of the frames, and based on those sentiments, you could classify the genres. Based on those sentiments, the genre of the movie can be classified, because every particular genre has certain set of sentiments or emotions involved in them. If I talk about the comedy genre, so comedy genre do have a large amount of say happy emotion in this genre as compared to the horror genre. Similarly, the horror genre might have more amount of surprise or shock frames as compared to the comedy genre. So every particular genre could be predicted with the help of this genre emotion mapping. So even we worked and developed one such genre and emotion theory in one of our paper. Which in which we do not have to look for we do not have to watch the complete trailer. We simply have to refer the genre emotion mapping, and the trailer could easily be classified into one or more of the genres to which it belongs. Now, sentiments when it comes to healthcare is nowadays quite a popular area, because this area was always neglected, not neglected. Basically, this area was not focused upon, because the data, the in healthcare, the data always remains a crucial task due to many privacy concerns. The people are not usually comfortable sharing their private reports, their details, their healthcare statistics for any kind of research or anything. So the problem here is obviously the data, but again with the invent of social media, this problem is somewhat decreasing. So many online pharmaceutical websites, people have started posting their reviews, their opinions about certain medications or certain drugs which they have consumed, and how effective they were. So we could use those sites, we could use those sites, websites, to see the effectiveness of any particular medication which people have received. So we basically focus on this specific part only. So when we talk about sentiments in healthcare, this is quite a challenging task, because the contextual words which determine the polarity of the sentiment are often difficult to capture. And moreover, the language expressed by the patients, consumers, and customers might differ significantly, and they can have multiple meanings too. So this area also lacks the context specific lexicons, which helps to evaluate the polarity of a sentence. Moreover, many pharmaceutical websites, as I've already discussed, they have investigated the opinions of the people to study the impact of various drugs and medications, and finally to measure the overall customer satisfaction. The sentiments in medical could roughly be categorized into these three types. So first are the diagnostic sentiment, which basically checks whether the patient has a certain disease or not, and its severity. So a doctor might check whether you have an asthma or not. So this could be the diagnostic sentiment. when it comes to patient health, so the patient health could also decrease or increase with time. So this could also be one of the artifact to measure the sentiments in the healthcare, that how is health is doing with time, how is health is changing with time. And finally, the experience of the treatment, that what was your experience, or what was the effectiveness of a particular medication which you have consumed. For instance, ibuprofen drug can be used to control the fever due to pneumonia too. So this drug has one more advantage of controlling the fever. So the experience and the effectiveness of the treatment could also be evaluated. Now, the significant contribution of our work is that we propose a text representation framework, which is basically the weighted word embeddings combined with the TF-IDF weighing scheme and the fast text embedding. So we follow a rigorous data cleaning approach, followed by adding extra linguistic constraints on the pre-trained embeddings, and which further boosts the performance of our classification. So we trained the 5 base classifiers and conducted extensive results on the drug review dataset using the various evaluation matrices like precision, recall, F1 score, accuracy, and ROC. And finally, we visualize and conclude certain observations which we got from the analysis. And so this is our proposed methodology. So we basically first start with the data pre-processing part, in which we pre-processes the data. So the pre-processing includes various steps like lowercase conversion, removing special characters, removing stop words, number to word conversion, stemming and lemmatization, and so on. So we'll be first doing with the data pre-processing part. So all these things I've already discussed. So we use num2 library, num2 words library for the number to word conversion. Then the text representation parts come. So we use the fast text pre-trained embeddings. So this is because these embeddings represent each word as an n-gram of characters. So this could capture the meaning of even shorter words, and it works well with the rare words. Then we use the counterfilling method, which add certain extra linguistic constraints on our pre-trained embeddings, like it injects the antonym and synonym constraints to improve the vector's ability to judge the semantic similarity between the words. And finally, we use the TF-IDF word scheming, and which are multiplied with the embeddings to get the final representation of our document. So as we are well aware of the fact that the TF-IDF approach assigns different weights to the words. So if I talk about any particular word in a document, so the term frequency gives you the frequency of each term in a document, and this particular will be giving us the frequency of a word in a document, but inverse document frequency will give the frequency of the word in all documents. So when we multiply these two terms, we'll be assigning the weights, the higher weights, to the more important words, and the rare words which are frequently occurring in the documents will automatically be given the words which are more occurring in the document will obviously be given less weights, because they are most common words in the document. And finally, we multiply them with the text embeddings so that we could get the final representation of the document. So these are the 5 classifiers which we have used here: SVM, naive Bayes, decision tree, random forest, and k nearest neighbor. So the dataset which we use is the drug review dataset, which is crawled from the pharmaceutical websites like drugs.com and druglib.com. We have over 2 lakh patient reviews of the medical drugs, along with a 10-star rating. So the ratings which are less than equal to 4, we classified it as negative, 4 to 5 as neutral, and greater than equal to 7 as positive. And we built the entire model in Python on 64-bit Windows 10 machine. So these are our classification results. So we could see that the SVM has majorly given good results. So the F1 score of 91.7, 80.2, and 96.6 was shown on the negative, neutral, and positive classes, and the worst behavior was shown by the KNN classifier. And these are the ROC curves and the confusion matrix. So the ROC curves also do suggest that the SVM is able to correctly distinguish between the different classes. The confusion matrix could be seen here, where we could see that certain percentage, 7% of negative samples were misclassified as positive, and 18% of the neutral samples are misclassified as also positive, and the rest of the results you could see here, 90%, 74%, and 98% for the negative, neutral, and positive classes respectively. So these are the this is the baseline comparison where we compare our work with several other baseline results. So we could see that our particular approach has significantly beaten the baseline results. Now these are the certain observations which we got. So we saw that the most popular medications which were used and which are quite popular among the patients were the birth control medicines like levonorgestrel and the ethanogestrel. And among the top 10 drugs, we saw that the phentermine drug received the maximum positive reviews, and there was not so much side effect with these with this medication. So it is basically used to lose weight. This medication is basically used to lose weight. And on the other hand, we see norethindrone has shown the negative polarity because people have experienced many side effects like headache, nausea after consuming this medication. And similarly, many patients have experienced many problems like weight gain, mood swings, anxiety, severe pain in ovaries by consuming the Nexplanon medication. So these were the different kind of medications, and these were the observations which we saw. So finally, I would like to conclude my work. So we investigated the role of sentiment analysis in the medical domain by analyzing the reviews of the patients on particular drugs. We use a weighted text approach of TF-IDF and fast text embeddings, and along with the counter filling method, which adds certain linguistic constraints on the embedding. And we experimented with the drug review data set. So possibly our work could be extended in various ways, like we could focus on the effectiveness of clinical documents like nurse reports, radiology reports, to see the rest of the particular kind of sentiments, like how the patient's health is improving over the time. And moreover, this domain do lack certain domain specific sentiment lexicon, which could be also a possible area of research. So finally, thank you for your time, and now I'm open for the questions. So I think I should.
Thank you, Asima, for a nice presentation, and it was a yes, please, if you have any question. Yes, from audience. Why SVM is performing the scenario has been seen that SVM is performing.
Okay. Sir, one possible reason could be that the outliers in the SVM are easily detected as compared to the k nearest neighbor. Possibly k nearest neighbor is a non-parametric method. That could also be one of the reasons, whereas SVM is a parametric method. So this could also be one of the possible reasons that SVM could be able to detect the outliers in my data set too.
Okay, so the data set that data
of three classes, correct? Positive, negative, and neutral.
Okay, what do you think multimodalities to utilize for these kind of data? Do you think that could be a data which can gives you a multimodalities to?
Yes, sir. Because since if we talk about the current situation of COVID-19 itself, so we could say when we come to the medical domain, so on the internet, various type of data set like the medical, the images, the chest rays, and the radiology reports of the patients are already there on the internet. So certain image data is also there. The chest x-rays are also there on the social media. So possibly when we consider multimodality, the image part could be embedded in this. Whereas if you talk about the speech part, I couldn't find any speech related data set in the healthcare domain. But yes, images could be one of the factor here which could be embedded here.
Okay, thank you, Asma.
Okay, sir.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, sir.
Yeah, please, can we have our next presentation? So, Raj Kumar. Yes, please, presentation is Suraj Kumar, Sandipyan Datta, Saurya Chaturvedi, NPA.
Sir, I have a question. Can I ask? I wanted to ask Ashima that has she used any sentiment lexicon for performing the classification?
Okay, so no, I haven't used any sentiment. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I haven't used any sentiment lexicon. The reason being is that I referred various previous methods, various publications. So I saw the accuracy with the sentiment lexicon has not improved so much. So if I talk about the numbers, so it could be that the previous accuracy was, let's say, 50%, and the accuracy received by using the sentiment lexicon is only 52%. So the sentiment lexicons in this area are not probably so good enough to capture the words which are there in the let's suppose the medical sentiment. So that's why I didn't use any sentiment lexicon. And secondly, there are quite very few sentiment lexicons here also. The words, various constraints are there. If those lexicons are related to some specific drugs or some specific medications only, or the length of those lexicons is also not so good enough probably. So not much much possible results were shown in the sentiment lexicon. So I didn't use any of them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome.
Yes, next presentation. Yeah, can we have next presentation? So next paper, can we go for the next paper? It's multi-feature optimization for summarization clinical trial description. So can we have authors of this? Yes, Sai Chetan Reddy, can you hear me? Yes, Sai Chetan Reddy, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Sai Chetan Reddy, please start your presentation.
Just a minute. Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, Sai Chetan, you are audible. You have a 15 minutes for presentation, so please go for the presentation.
Okay. So my work is on exploring multi-feature optimization and summarizing clinical trial data. So it's a very starting stage of work. This is a short paper. So the recent outbreak of COVID has catalyzed development in corona vaccine. As we all know that for any vaccine to be successful, there are multiple steps involved. So one of such significant steps is clinical trials. So clinical trials generally takes a lot of time in development. What exactly clinical trials are? They for any given candidate vaccine, they study how effective it's performing on a human health and what are the side effects and all that. So there are like for example, for the COVID vaccine, there are AstraZeneca has been doing clinical trials for over 3-4 months. Actually, it takes a lot more time, but due to such an unprecedented situation, they are fast tracked it. But even then, there are a lot of data which can be summarized, or like there is a need for summarization because when we are talking about like 1 lakh people clinical trials, it's not possible for a person to summarize and get the data. So clinical trials remains a gold standard for medical advances because it gives a precedent for any situation, like how a person of different races and different regions are reacted to that particular trial or particular vaccine or medication. Despite all this, the number of staff or cost and all that has made it difficult to access such information. So the need for retrieving important information is there. And if you see the number of clinical trials that are registered on clinicaltrials.gov from 1990 to 2017, it's exponentially increasing. So actually clinicaltrial.gov is a government organization which keeps privately and publicly funded clinical studies around the world. Even most of the vaccines are using clinicaltrials.gov to save their results. So as I have told, this is of paramount interest and importance. So for this, we have used a dataset from extractive summarization on clinical trials paper, which has of nearly 1 lakh 10,016 records. So the dataset statistics are given here. So this is our approach. For every given detailed description, we process the data for any symbols and all that. When the names and certain technical jargon has certain scientific terms, so we have removed that. Then we have split that into sentence level, and for every just as we know, for every summarization there is a limit. Obviously our goal is to minimize the sentence, yet keep the gist of that. So we have used for now, as I have mentioned, it's a very exploratory and very starting stage of study. So we have used only 3 surface level features: position, TF-IDF, and word mover. Other possibles are like length and coverage. Coverage can be said as like what to include the diversity, what I meant by coverage here. So this is my multi-feature optimization algorithm. So first we have like, it's a very intuitive, I think. So these are the results we have obtained using our method. So for that, we have used a different variants. First, we have used only position, then only TF-IDF, and then word mover distance. And our objective is PTW, which is multi-objective optimization. So these are sample summaries, which are generated using our MFO PTW. That's as I have mentioned, it's a very exploratory study, and we are currently exploring the use of genetic algorithm in summarizing the clinical trials. The one reason we are using unsupervised learning is the gold standard is not present, and even for the COVID dataset we are currently exploring, the gold dataset is currently unavailable. So we are exploring different genetic algorithms. And so I think concludes. Are there any questions?
Okay, thank you, Sai Chetan. Sai Chetan for the nice presentation and very good relevant topic in the present scenario. And so, audience, please, if you have any question, this audience, please ask if you have any query regarding this presentation. Okay, Sai Chetan, so let me ask one question regarding a multi-feature optimization.
Oh, okay.
What is this and how you utilize this multi-feature optimization over here?
So actually, sir, my goal is to create like even when you're using multimodal data also. So when we are suppose we are using, it's a generic framework which can be used in multiple scenarios. Like if we are using multimodal data where we have image and corresponding text. And first we have to we try to do only text, and then we use only using image. But what my multi-feature optimization that tries to do is it essentially weights that and gives a better output.
Okay, what are the challenges that you have faced in this implementation?
So actually, for this particular, there is no image data. So I haven't seen how it exactly works image data set. But for the text, the most of it depends only on surface level features, not on embedding, like not on semantic spaces, but on surface level features. So that's kind of counterintuitive, but that's true for most of the NLP problems.
Okay, thank you, Sai Chetan. Thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
audience, please. So yes, please. Then I think next we move for the next presentation. So yes, yes, Swaraj Kumar, is it present? Swaraj Kumar, is it present? Okay, I think next presentation, Priyanka Chaudhary. So please, Priyanka. Yes, please. Sorry, yes, Priyanka. Priyanka Chaudhary, please. Yes, please help Priyanka Chaudhary to share the screen. Yes, Priyanka, are you comfortable?
Hello.
Priyanka, is it fine? Are you able to
Yes,
share?
yes, sir. I am able to share, but I'm not. Okay, is it visible?
Yeah, I can see. Yes.
How to minimize this screen? Okay. Good morning to everyone. the title of my paper is Event Detection and Localization for Sparsely Populated Outdoor Environment Using Seismic Sensor. So I'm not able to. Oh, okay. So in the title, I have used a few words: detection and localization, sparsely populated, and seismic sensor. So detection means it is simple. If we are doing surveillance on some area, the detection, if something happened in that particular area, that is called detection. And localization, where that particular event happened in that monitored area. In our case, the detection is a human movement in that particular area, and localized where that particular human movement is happening. Okay, am I audible? Hello?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Sparsely populated means we are taking care of that particular area where the number of people are very less. The example of this kind of sparsely populated area can be a border area scenario. The seismic sensor is a sensor which is used for seismic exploration. Like it measures the vibration, and these vibrations are generated due to walking of people, animal, or some machine operations. So now the question arises how that the detection, and so till now we have got that we are going to perform detection and localization using seismic sensor. So how detection and localization can be performed? So there are two methods: a visual method and non-visual methods. Visual methods means you are monitoring a particular area using CCTV cameras. Some example, just CCTV camera is some example, and with the help of that CCTV camera, we can see that there's someone in that particular area, and that is going to one place to that another place. Non-visual methods does not use any kind of visual informations. So PIR sensor, seismic sensor, wireless sensors are example of these. Okay. Now we see. So in the paper we will explore non-visual methods only. Hai na? Okay. Now what are the methodology? There are two kind of methodologies for detection and localization. First is active method. Second is passive method. In active method, you support the framework. An example of active method is that you carry your mobile phone, and your mobile phone is connected to some network, and with the help of that network, you are located. And I am talking about GPS. And passive methods are that where you are not supposed to help the framework. Like if there is some intruder, it is not supposed to support the security systems. Agriculture, stray animals, so we cannot uh, always attach a device to stray animals and wild animals. So we will focus only passive or device-free method for detection and localization. So passive and device-free are synonym. It means we are not attaching any device, or target is not supporting the localization framework. Okay, so what are the motivation? Military and civil application in outdoor environment. So border protection and camp protection. Civil application is some suppose fire rescue scenarios. We don't know where are the persons. So another motivation is no need to associate any device to target body, and to analyze and understand the effect of target. Means how the body of a target affects the signal pattern. Privacy preservation. Suppose we are using one example I gave, the elderly care. It can be used for elderly care. So in some scenarios, videos may be affecting the privacy. So we are using non-visual methods. So there is no question that it will affect our privacy. So there are sensing methodology means how can we sense a target in the monitored area. There are so many technologies, but we have explored only 4 methodologies: seismic sensor, passive infrared sensors, PIR sensor, audio sensors, wireless sensor. But each sensor has some problem associated with it. The PIR sensor is dependent on its performance, ambient temperature. Audio sensor is too much affected by the environmental noise, sound, and loud noises. Wireless technology affected by too much by scattering, reflection, refraction, multipath effects. So we think we can use seismic sensors because because it is not affected by multi-part effect, it is not affected by noise, it is not affected by environmental temperature. So this is our problem statement, and it is our actual representation of area. Our area of experiment is 4.5 meter by 4.5 meter, around 22 meter square. And there are 3 sensors in our area. This is sensor 1, this is sensor 2, and this is sensor 3. And sensors are placed in a pit of depth 15 to 16 centimeter. है ना? And there are 45 where we have collected the data. So FP is a fingerprint, means in every machine learning algorithm we collect the training data. So FP is something like training data. And X is the online data, because there are 3 sensors. The 3 sensor will at some point of time they will collect three values, and X is a vector of 3 values. F is a function that maps these online data X, or which is from unknown location, and FP a pre-collected training data to result. A PCAP is a vector which tells it is result, it is detected if target is there in the area or not, or what is its location. So it is the proposed framework. There are L locations. In our case, how many there are? L value of L is 45. So we pre-process the data, arrange the data, and data goes to 2 models: a regression model, a seismic model. Regression model use regression based parameter computation. Seismic model uses property of seismic waves. After some computation, this value goes to circle parameter estimation. Means the parameter of circles are estimated with the help of regression or seismic property. So we calculate the center and the radius, and we draw the circle. The position of circle, based on the position of circle, we localize a target. Okay. So offline data pre-processing steps. So this is first we compute average noise. Average noise means there is no external event in that particular area. Means it is background data. So we compute the average background data. Now we collect the data for some activity. In our case, activity is foot drill. So we see that the value is higher than the noise values. We can see it is 19, it is 11, it is 21, it is 22. Now how we denoise data? We subtract the 13 from every value. So some values are negative. We set the negative values to 0. Now we construct the batch and take the maximum from each batch and take the average. What is the average maximum reading correspond to each sensor for one location. Similarly, we collect data for all the 3 sensor, prepare data for every sensor for L location. Thus, in this way, we create a matrix of what's of size 3 cross 45. We create a matrix of 3 cross 45. Okay. So input constructions. So we have constructed a matrix of 3 cross 45, and we create because we have mentioned, I have mentioned earlier, I am using regression based model. So regression based model, there is some independent variable. So we have to create an energy distance couple. So E is the average energy at distance D, or D is the distance of event from the sensor. How it is created? So I created this data. There is one event E1, E2, and E3 at distance D1. There is some event. So how will we create ED1? So E1 plus E2 plus E3 divided by 3. This is the average sensor reading at distance D1. Similarly, we create the energy distance tuple. So now we are ready for regression problem. So circle parameter estimation means we have to identify the circle center and radius of the circle. So what is the location? In this case, location is the location of sensor is the center of radius. What is the radius? Distance of event from sensors. So this we have to estimate based on these. Okay, we give an energy value and we have to estimate at what distance this particular event happen. Okay, so we train a decision tree based regression, and in energy distance, energy is our independent variable. A dependent variable is D. So we are we are computing this. Okay. So at this point, we have now computed the center of circle, and we have estimated the distance using this regression problem. For regression, we have used decision tree. Okay. Now I initially told that we are using seismic property also to compute the parameter of circle. So how can we utilize the seismic property? In the literature, we have found this relation. What is this relation? We can get it as follows. These are sensor 1, this is sensor 2, and there's some event happen xy 4.3, 5. We have to estimate this. So we don't know ds1 and ds2, but the relation between energy and distance in the case of seismic sensor is given by E proportional to 1 by D. So we take two sensor S1 and S2 at a time, and we simplify the relation like this: ds1 by ds2 equal to es2 by es1 equal to alpha. ds2 by ds1 is Euclidean distance. So we simply solve this. We open this equation and write like this. And xs1 and ys1 are known. xs2 is known. ys2 is known. X and y are not known. It is like this, So we arrange in such that it forms an equation of circle: x minus h plus y minus k square equal to r square. This is circle radius form. Bracket is starting from this and this. It is x minus a square y minus b square equal to r square. So we know the center of the circle. This is center. This is center x coordinate. This is y coordinate. This is the radius. Okay. So for seismic property wave based approach, we also receive the center and radius of the circles. So this should be happen. We draw the circle, and the intersection point of that circle should be the location of a target. So problem kya hai isme? What is the problem? A circle drawn with the estimated radius may or may not intersect. We will see how they not intersect. Solution: we propose a heuristic for location estimation. In some scenario, we draw the circle and we get something like this. So how we are going to solve? Because for localization, it must be scenario, but it is not happening in our case. So what we can do, we take two circles at a time. This is circle 1 and circle 2, and we identify the closest pair, which is P1 and P2, and the midpoint of line joining P1 and P2 is one of the effective point, that is star. Now we repeat the process from circle C2 and circle 3. We get one more effective point somewhere here, and we repeat the process for circle 1 and circle 3, and we get some point here. The centroid of all three effective point is our estimated target location. If this is the scenario when pairwise circles are not intersecting pairwise, I am using word pairwise. Now if two circles intersect, so we get two intersection point. We have to estimate the location of target. So we have to eliminate one intersection point. So we remove that intersection point which is far from circle C3, circle 3. So this point is far from the points on the peripheral of circle C3, circle 3, and the line joining this closest point of these 2 points, midpoint, is one of the effective points. Now in this way we got one effective point, circle C2 or circle 3. This scenario will be applicable. This scenario, no intersection case. And circle 1 and circle 3, again this case will be applicable. So I have taken only two cases: when two circle intersect, when any two circle intersect, and when two circle do not intersect. So these two cases cover all the cases. So every intersection, every pair of circle give one effective point, and centroid of the effective point is effective target location. So this is our experimental result. Hello. This is our experimental result. We have drawn the CDF over the area of 22 meter square, and we clearly see the points which give error below 1 meter are almost 40%. The points below 1.25 errors are almost 50%, and the points below 1.5 meter are 62%. So NLRM, the regression based approach, is training-based approach. That's why it is giving best, worst, and we are given 3 kind of parameters: best performance, worst performance, average performance. SPM is just using a rule to generate a circle. It is using just this rule. It requires only 3 readings and location of sensor to estimate the target location. So it is not a training-based approach. So there is no best case, worst case, or average case. And batch size is how many seconds of data you accumulate. So batch size in 5 samples means 0.5 seconds, 10 samples means 1 second. So we can see the localized results in terms of meters. So we can clearly see the SPM, that is seismic property based approach, gives the best performance. It's better performance than the average performance of training based approach. But it was our initial results. It was the initial part of our surveillance framework. So we have extended our experiment. So we need to experiment on the larger area to see that if always seismic sensor based approach give better result than training based approach. But these results are based on the paper I have submitted on BigML. So future direction are that exploring more on seismic sensors means cost performance trade-off. Means seismic sensors are costly, and other sensors are cheap. Can be if there is something, if we increase cost like seismic sensors, there is no doubt we will get good performance. But we have to analyze the cost performance trade-off. Can we identify the activity and can we continuously track the target? It is our work, we are completed, but it is not on BigML paper. And we have to compare the other parameters also. Can we compare the audio and PIR sensors for localization? And can we compare with seismic sensors? Can we make a hybrid sensor based approach for, and can we fuse the data? Okay, are there any questions? Hello?
Yes, thank you, Priyankar. It's a very nice presentation that you have presented. And really the topic is also very important for the present days for intelligent and smart surveillance system. So, yes, audience, do you have any question? Please, audience. Is there any question from audience? So, Priyanka, I want to ask, and I want to know about your work basically. So, you did some work for activity recognition using these sensors?
Yes, sir. I'm about to submit that work.
Okay, okay. So, what are the challenges that you have faced when you have been going to compare with the vision-based activity recognition rather than doing this sensor-based?
Vision-based systems, actually, I am not using anywhere in vision.
Okay.
We are using non-visual sensors only.
So these sensors deployment, is it possible to have in every scenario?
Yes, sir. It can be done in any scenario. Yes, I have verified it.
Okay, so have you implemented these sensors? Have you deployed somewhere? Then you have captured the activities?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have deployed it and I have captured activities, and even I have some data for military grade vehicles also.
Okay. Okay. So also you use a regression model. So what kind of regression model do you think that is best performing in this scenario?
The regression model which are linear in nature, they were not giving the good results.
Okay.
So I shifted to non-linear regression based model, and generally the decision tree, which is the first topic we read in the machine learning.
Okay.
So I tried to use decision tree based method, and fortunately it gave me the very nice answer.
Okay, so Priyanka, one more question that comes if you are going for this kind of study. So when you are going to compare your work with others' work, so do you find a similar state of art for this kind of work?
No, sir. I don't find, but there is some work in indoor scenarios. But
Okay.
in indoor scenarios, there are very less challenges. You have very good power
Yes.
supply always.
Yes.
So, but some work has people have done, but they are using just timestamp.
Okay. So you deployed these since outdoor environment?
Yes, sir. I have deployed the sensor in outdoor environment.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Priyanka. Thank you. Nice presentation. Thank you. All the best. Okay. Yes. Next presentation. Can we have our next author if present? Suraj Kumar. So I think we have reached the end of the session. So all the papers that has been presented, one of the paper authors are, I think, absent. So thank you for presenting your work in this conference. And it was really nice to see you all people in this conference. And your presentation, your contribution definitely given us a boost for our conference. So thank you very much for presenting your work and participating in this conference. I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.